Okay, today we're talking about MMA rule changes and how it can affect the sport. For me, think making it a little bit more legitimate over time. I don't want to say it's not legitimate now because it's the only sport I watch, but when I compare it to other sports, it seems more like entertainment. It seems more like an event versus an actual sport. And I'll explain what I mean. This weekend, the UFC had their pay-per-view 311 in Los Angeles. They had a great event. Everything went pretty well for the most part. But when you look at the number of rounds that each fighter has to fight, it differs depending on if you're just a normal fighter or a champion. And to me, that makes zero sense. If you're a fighter and you play the sport of fighting, competing against another fighter, you should all have the same number of rounds. Just like in professional boxing, they all fight, all right, the same amount of rounds, all right. I think maybe the championship fights do go 12 rounds or something like that. But it used to be all 15 rounds. Some it's 10, some it's 12. But everyone has to fight the same amount, all right? And for me, all MMA promotions do this 5-round thing for the championship fights or their main event fights. And that's another weird one. You're not even the champion. You're just the last fight on the card. Let's just say on another weekend, next weekend, they're going to fight 5 rounds as well. But I liken it to a sport. Imagine the NFL. In the playoffs, they play, instead of 4 periods of 15 minutes, they play 6. They extend the game. It doesn't seem like they're playing a different game. Your strategy has to change. And you see that in these 5-round fights. They're more hesitant at first because they don't have as much time. They extend, all right? Think about the training aspect of things. You're training for 3 rounds versus training for 5 rounds. One of the things that they knock on fighters that are younger, they go, oh, well, he's not really ready for 5 rounds, so he was a little inexperienced. He'll get there. Why is everyone just training for 5 rounds anyways? My solution, where I come in and say, let's change it, because if all the fights were 5 rounds, it would take 4 hours to get through, or not 4 hours, it'd take 12 hours. It already takes 7 hours really for a full event from prelims all the way to the main card. Well, I would make it 4 rounds. And I know that's an even number and people get upset with even numbers, but this is my rationale. 4 rounds with the option for a 5, meaning a sudden death, last round settles it all. And this is my rule change that I think makes it a little bit more legitimate, especially with the concept of fighting. Because who really wins a fight? The guy who wins the first round or the guy who wins the 5th round? To me, the guy who's winning toward the end, that guy's really winning more so. So here's the rule change. You got 4 rounds. Again, if you knock the guy out in the first round, that's fine. But what I'm saying is it would go to the judges' scorecards after 4. I like open scoring where you can see what the judges have scored the bout. So I think that would play into it. So there's no surprises when the 4th round ends. But if it's tied on the judges' scorecards, let's just say one judge has it 3-1 for one fighter. The other judge has it 3-1 for the other fighter. Another judge has it 2-2. Well, those 2 cancel them out and it's 2-2. You'd have to get a majority of those 3 judges. So you'd have to have 2 judges who think that it's going to one fighter, right? If one is up, one is down, and one is in the middle, right? Then you're not good. But you'd know this going in. So if you're beating 3 rounds, if you win for 3 rounds, and the other guy gets the 4th round, hey, you won 3. Even if they had a 5th round, he still wouldn't win the fight, right? So he knows he's got to knock that guy out in that. Imagine the excitement, all right? But then imagine the excitement. 4 rounds, it's 2-2 on all those judges' scorecards. 1 round to settle it all. Now it's a clear winner. Some guys, they win the first couple rounds. Some guys win the last couple rounds, and it comes down to like the 3rd round. To me, in the middle of the fight, oh, this guy jabbed and slipped 1 punch, and that comes down to it. I think the last round should be the most important round. And that's like overtime in any game. That's like the 4th quarter, all right? When things are close, that should be the most decisive round. That should be the most decisive moment. For me, that would make it more legitimate. It would feel more like a real sport. Maybe even give them a little bit more rest before that 5th round, because they're announcing, the announcer comes out, and we're going to sudden death, or we're going to the final round, whatever it is. They do this in bare knuckle, 5 rounds with an option of 6. So if the judges get it tied, they go to 6. I like that. Another rule change, I'm not big on the cage. I think the octagon for the UFC is trademarked and they have their own thing, so they're not going to get rid of it. But I like the Pride rules back in the day where they had a ring, like a boxing ring, because when you got pushed up against that, the ropes, right, they move you. And I think when people just hold each other up against the fence, I don't like that. So I think that is a little bit annoying where you have someone holding them up against the fence. But that was just a little added. But for me, the rule change with the number of rounds, I think would make the sport legitimate. I think it would make it more exciting. Open scoring would make it more exciting. I think one of the reasons why you won't see this, although, I hope it does happen, it's not going to happen because I feel like it still is entertainment. And I think that sometimes they don't want people to know the scoring because they change them at the end of the fight. I know it sounds like it's conspiratorial, but I've seen weird things happen where it's almost like someone erased something and then put it in, because how could you get that score when it just doesn't make sense? So I feel like they always leave that option open with not having open scoring. So if they see the result going one way, they can change it the other way. It's still entertainment at the end of the day. If you want to make it a legit sport, you got to have open scoring. Everybody's got to know what's going on, so there's no sleight of hand. And you make the last round the most important round, just like every other sport. Who wins the fight? If you won the first 2 quarters, all right, and then you lost the last 2 quarters in regard to the score, you were up by 3 points, and then you lose at the end of the 4th quarter, it's whoever has the most points. In fighting, if you win the first 3 rounds and you lose the last 2, and the momentum is shifting, and if we put you a fight to the death, you'd be losing because you're more tired, you're this, you're that. Who won the fight? Oh, well, a guy who won the first 3 rounds. To me, it just seems a little silly in regard to a fight. If that's the parameters, beating the heck out of someone, the last round should be. Now, they do this in one championship where they weigh the latter rounds a little bit heavier. The way that their scoring system is a little bit different. So I like that. But I think that this would solve it all. Everyone trains for a 5-round fight. So now everyone's on the same playing field, whether it's your first fight in the promotion or if you're a champion. All the fights on the card are the same. You all know the scores that are going in. So there's no differences. Everyone's playing the same sport. Everyone's playing the same thing. Another thing with the cage, in the UFC, which is weird, they have different size cages depending on their apex events and then their normal events. To me, that's like playing on a half court basketball or like a smaller court versus the real. And that, to me, for different styles of fighting, that plays a huge role. Heavyweight guys, these bigger guys who are in a smaller area, I think that's another weird thing that's in there that just makes it, again, seem, I don't like the word gimmicky because that's not what I mean. I don't want to disrespect these fighters. I think they're being disrespected by fighting on a smaller area. I think it just makes it seem more like this is entertainment and we're just, who cares how it is, let's just put them out there and let's just have them fight to the death. Kind of like, and that basically is what we're watching. But I think if you want to make it a legitimate sport, you got to have some rule changes. You got to have more consistency across the board for whether it's your first day or if you're a champion of 12 years. We need to have a little bit more consistency. And I like the weighting if it's more weighted towards the end rounds, especially when you have that 5th round where it's all the marbles are on that last one. And everybody in the arena knows that this is the round that decides it. Instead of going, well, I think he won the first 3 rounds. Well, that round 3 was really, really close. So maybe it went to the other guy. Well, the other guy, he got the first 2 definitely, but the other guy got the last 2. It's like we're mixing all this stuff up about these little details that go on in the fight, especially when it's a close fight. Whoever's winning at the end, that's who's winning the fight. That's the winner to me. So that's what I would propose. I talked about weight cutting. Let's get rid of that. All right. You watched my video from 2 days ago. It was my most recent video. Watch that about weight cutting. It gets my thoughts about weight cutting out there. There's some good comments on it. Like, hey, this is just what we do, right? And it's just how it is. Look, you got to evolve. You got to be a legitimate sport. You got to have your athletes at peak potential. Get rid of the weight cutting. That's a simple change on that one as well. All right. Have them weigh in as they're walking out. If they don't weigh in at the weight that they said they were going to weigh in on the contract, they have to pay a huge fine. And when they rebook the fight, they got to pay whoever didn't make weight. That person's got to pay the other person. Everybody knows what they walk around at. They all walk around. They all cut the same pretty much amount of weight to fight at a certain weight, and then they gain it all back. It's pointless. It's stupid. It's dangerous because of the dehydration effects on the brain when you're getting hit in the head. So watch that video. But those are my rule changes. Hope you liked them. And until next time, I'll see you then.